Hey, Julia Lou here, and today we're going to talk about evictions. Um, there's an eviction process, and there's steps to the process, and we're going to go through them and discuss them and see what they mean. So the first step in an eviction process is called a pay or vacate order. Um, Now, a pay or vacate order is handed to you by your landlord. It does not need to be served by a sheriff. It does not need to be served by a court employee. It can just be handed to you by your landlord. And basically, what it says is you have 72 hours, 3 days, to pay or vacate. Um, your landlord is not required by law to accept partial payment. So let's say you owe $500 and you have 200. He doesn't have to take that. If he does take it, then make sure you get a receipt. Make sure you don't pay in cash because it's harder to track. Get a money order, a check. Don't put it in a drop box. Don't put it in any sort of mailbox. You get your receipt from your landlord for any monies you give him. I'm going to say him. It could be a her, but I'm just going to use him because it's easier. So you have 72 hours. Let's say you can't pay. Then you have the option to vacate. Well, you have kids, you've got, 72 hours is not a lot of time, and it might be very difficult for you to vacate. So let's say you can't meet either of these standards. Now what? Now what's going to happen? Well, if you neither pay nor vacate in 72 hours, your landlord can proceed with the eviction process. The next step you will get is what's called a summons and complaint, and that is served to you by a sheriff or a court employee, and it will be handed directly to you, and it'll be very official. And typically, laws vary a bit from state to state, so you may want to contact legal aid at this point. But typically you have a week to respond to this summons and complaint. Do not ignore it. Do not put your head in the sand and ignore it. If you do that, you will lose the eviction right off the bat. You need to provide your side of the story. Why your arrears in rent. Why you haven't paid your rent. And you have to write it all down on this form. Read it very carefully and follow all the directions very carefully. And then once you have filled out your summons and complaint, you need to mail it back. There's usually a deadline. Typically it's a week, but read that piece of paper very carefully. It's really important. And then you will receive a court date. You're going to get a court date and time that you need to show up, and your landlord will be there, and you will be there. And you're going to present both sides to the judge, and the judge will determine what he or she feels is fair going forward. Bring any supporting documentation you have, anything you have that can validate your side of the story. If you had surgery and missed work, you bring your medical records. If your car broke down and you were unable to go to work, and then paying for the car caused you to have to take money that you normally would put towards your rent, you bring that receipt. You bring all of that. And you present all that information to the judge. Now, ultimately, it is going to be on the judge to decide what's going to happen going forward. And you could lose the eviction. It could happen. Losing an eviction can make renting housing going forward very difficult, because losing an eviction is a public thing. Like, it is now public information, and it is public records, and landlords can search for that. So if you feel you have a solid case, if you feel you have a very good reason for not for being behind on your rent, then you present it to the court. But losing an eviction is difficult, and you probably don't want to do that, obviously. And then there'd be, orders to vacate, and then it's a court order to vacate at that point. So if you get served with a pay and vacate notice, there are steps you can take and things you can do. So thanks for stopping by, and maybe next time we'll talk about food pantries and stuff, okay? All right, bye-bye.